I'm Jimmy, and this is my response for the discussion board response number 3. We're answering the following questions. How are differing American identities being put together in A Sweatshop Romance, A White Heron, and The Wife of His Youth? We're also asked to think about issues of race, class, ethnicity, and gender. I think that each of the 3 stories represented a different aspect of what America was growing towards. Each of the stories had a different lesson to teach, but the one thing they all had in common was that people should stand for what they believe in. In A Sweatshop Romance, a small apartment/factory had 4 employees working inside it. Belle, the only female, is the main focus of the story in my opinion. Haman was the man who saved every penny he could from his paycheck, and he was also in the process of courting Belle when the story first picks up. I guess that back in the day, 3 months was a long time to date because she was expecting him to ask her to marry him already. Unfortunately for him, he lacked the self-confidence to ask her, and she took that as he was just playing games with her instead of pursuing a serious relationship. When their employer steps out of line and ordering her around, another worker, David, is the one who ends up standing up for her. He has been secretly in love with her and seizes the opportunity to quit the sweatshop with Belle and take her to a better job. I think in this story we learned about how the lower classes had to act, and we also learned a lesson that you need to seize the moment or else someone else will, because at the end David ends up being the one who gets engaged to Belle. In A White Heron we learn of a little girl named Silva, who I believe is around 9, who lives with her grandmother on a farm. She grew up in a congested household with many other siblings, and it was in the city. And also she was apparently inherently shy. But her grandmother decided she would come live with her, and ever since then she had been a much happier kid. She was very in tune with nature and had developed a trust with the woods and the creatures within the woods around the farm. When she was bringing her cow home after letting it wander, she bumped into a young handsome hunter. He was trying to kill one of every bird species so that he could have them stuffed and added to a collection he'd been growing since he was a boy. He had seen a white heron which were supposed to not even exist in the area that he was in, and so he was searching high and low for it, and he was asking anyone who might be able to help him to find it. Silva overcame her fear of climbing the tallest tree on the farm just so that she could pinpoint the exact location of the bird's nest for the hunter. She had a relative idea of where it lived to begin with because she had explored so much of the farm. But after finding the nest and spending some time taking in the views at the top of the tree, with the bird perched in the same tree as her, she realized that she can't sell out the bird for the money the man was offering. Even though for a second she wanted to impress the handsome guy, she decides that the relationship she has established with nature around her is much more valuable, and so she keeps it a secret. I think that this is a clear reversal of a typical girl of the time period. She was out and about getting her feet dirty and exploring rather than learning the ways a proper lady would act. She lived for the adventures of life and was not settling for ordinary. And finally, in The Wife of His Youth, Mr. Ryder, the successful mixed-race man who considers himself to be upper class and probably associates more with white people than black. He is the leader of a community called Blue Veins, which means they're white enough to see blue veins under their skin, which he says isn't really a requirement for being in the society, but rather just naturally happens because those with that kind of genetics are better members of society. The society is all successful people, entrepreneurs, lawyers, doctors, making up the social class. He is an older gentleman and single, and he is never married, and he has his eye on a woman, so he throws a ball to finally ask her to be his wife. But he runs into a much older lady who is a former slave and is looking for her husband she had lost over 25 years ago. She has a very severe accent and obviously by her grammar very little or no education. She cooked her way all over the US looking for her husband who ran away before being sold, and she thinks he came back to look for her, but she was already sold by the time he could. Mr. Ryder turns out to be that very husband that left, and doesn't reveal it to her immediately. But a short while later, they're all making toasts at his party, and he tells the story of the woman. Then he reveals that she is his wife. For me, this is a big step for Mr. Ryder to take. Here he is trying to be the leader of a high-class society, and he is married to a former slave that is much older than he is, and is nowhere near the social standing that he is. It is impressive to see that he gives up all the work he has done growing in class because he is finally reunited with his wife. To me, all three stories were unique and inspiring, and to me the level on which they relate is in their message. All people should stand for what they believe in and shouldn't be persuaded away from doing so by anyone or anything else.